Alright everyone, photo doctoring and things like that are quite common in the current era. A lot of people don't seem to understand this. When we think of people being like scrubbed from history or things being like changed in the background of a picture or something scrubbed out of film or whatever, when we talk about that kind of underhanded censorship or subversion, we might call it in some cases. Now, we usually think of like the Stalinist era, we think of the 30s and 40s like the Soviet Union or maybe Mao's China or something. But it actually happens quite commonly now. Like the media loves to do this. They'll take things out of context. There's always lie by structure, lie by omission. Most news articles you read are not fully truthful, and virtually all of them are biased. And a lot of people don't understand this. Even like content creation, like I admit I have a political bias. I'm a minarchist, not monarchist, minarchist. Believe in limited government and the Constitution and things like that. I consider those to be objectively superior qualities, but that is ultimately a biased opinion I happen to hold. So we have this one example from France where they were doing some sort of news report, and there was a sign being held up where they erased half of the sign. Link in the description, you can see actually what it entails. It's sort of scrubbing the fact that it was an anti-Macron sign. It was actually funny. They scrubbed out the second part, so it just said Macron. And the funny part is, they then said, well, we apologize, it was human error. Yes, it was human error, I'm sure it was, because obviously a human decided to take this picture, put it up as a news graphic, and erase half of what one of these protesters' signs was saying. And if you look closely, you'll probably find other examples of this, like, too numerous to count. It's the little changes that you don't notice that are more pervasive, I think, than something like this. Usually it's not so overt. It's like, what did you expect to happen? You've got an image that's circulating, and then another image that's going to be shown to people who they're probably mostly in France or interested in the subject matter. You're probably going to get some people that compare the two and say something's not quite right here. Do the magic eye thing on two images, by the way, and you can always tell if there are any differences between them. Just a little tip and trick there for anyone that wants to do it fairly quickly. It's sort of is like Stalinism, though, when you think about it. You're being shown a reality that is not actually real. And that's dangerous when that begins to happen. When it begins to happen, it's usually good evidence that there's some tyranny involved, some shady business going on. I wouldn't be surprised. Over in France, there's no free press, necessarily. It could be that they did this out of fear of repercussions from Macron's people. But they never actually mention that now, do they? They just say it was human error, and they're really, really sorry that they airbrushed this picture for absolutely no apparent purpose. They don't even explain that. I mean, if they came out and said, well, yeah, we removed that because we were afraid we'd run afoul some obscure French law about, objectionable content or something, I think people would have been more, maybe, receptive of that explanation. But this is stage, remember, for those living under a rock. This is against the backdrop of the Gilets jaunes over there, the yellow vest, they call them rioters, but they're just protesters mostly, who have risen up against Macron's dictatorship, which is what it's morphed into. In the wake of him declaring that he would govern like Jupiter, which was really funny, his approvals dropped to sub 20%. He's no longer got a viable leadership role in the state of France. Anyway, he keeps calling for calm, and it's not really calm. The other day, someone was like, oh, only like 5,000 people showed up to protest at some march in Belgium. I think they're having political issues right now too. Like, is it their president or prime minister is like totally embattled because of support for the Marrakesh Agreement, which I'll be talking about separately, something like that. And they're like, well, only like 5,000 people from the so-called far right showed up to protest. And like, again, it's just a false reality that you're seeing. The real story is, I'm sure that not everyone there is far right. They're probably anarchists and communists protesting too. And there are certainly going to be, what you would normal people, and even people who aren't that political in that crowd. And that's not a small number. 5,000 people is quite a crowd. I mean, if you're expecting Martin Luther King, I have a dream size rally, and you get 5,000 people, it's probably a letdown. But if you don't have any prior estimate of how many people are going to show up, that's pretty formidable. You're going to need many police in order to make sure that no rioting breaks out. And I think that one was mostly a peaceful rally, if I remember correctly. So you got a situation here where the media is constantly portraying a reality that's not there. And this happens in tech all the time. It's like when they say PewDiePie has ties to Nazis, and stuff like that. Like, you know, he made a video on Vox yesterday, which was actually hilarious. That's not real. It's not real. The problem is that people that aren't in the know will generally just accept it as fact if they happen to like one of these outlets. That's why the legacy media can still be a danger. It's declining. Fewer and fewer people trust it, but there are still a lot that do. Even if the mainstream media has, like, what is it, 20-30% of people think they're trustworthy. That's still a lot of people. If you're looking at the US, it's like, what, 100 million people or something maybe? Something like that. That's a lot of people that are totally delusional. That's enough to overthrow society and install a dictatorship practically. It's enough to prop up tyranny and ignorance and everything wrong and terrible about the world. So you've got that situation. So restraint should be shown by these people. I mean, you know, the job is called journalism. They don't really conduct it anymore. And I know, again, in some Western European countries especially, free press is an illusion. It's like in Britain, where a judge apparently can just keep you from talking about a story because it's inconvenient to the political situation, like with Tommy Robinson, who you know, gets deplatformed all the time in order to not be able to tell his story as effectively. These sorts of things have been happening. They're largely negative for a free society. Civilization in the West is arguably declining a bit at the moment. It's sad. I'm not saying, well, headed towards civil war, any, you know, apocalyptic shit, but right now we're in a period of decline. We're in a period of, there's decadence, there's abuse, censorious bullcrap, a lot of people support corporations telling everyone what to do, which I think is a terrible idea, and then you have this sort of stuff happening, certainly in Europe and elsewhere. That's about all. Peace out.